Hi, I'm Doreen Downing, and this is the Find Your Voice, Change Your Life podcast series where I get to interview people who have felt like they didn't have a voice and they went through an experience, sometimes really unpleasant. Maybe it was no kind of support growing up, or maybe it was just a boss at work, or whatever the circumstances, it feels like the voice didn't get to flourish. But we all have voices, don't we? We all want to be heard. We all want to share our gifts. We just have to be able to tap into the voice that's already there. That's the essence. Find your voice, change your life. And today I'm really happy to introduce Rosemary McKenzie. And she is the founder, this is so exciting, the founder of something called Craig's Table, the world's first training and community engagement for injured workers. No injured worker overlooked, no injured worker left behind. Isn't that amazing? Just that whole concept of us being able to have a population of injured workers where there's somebody like you, Rosemary, who's a stand for it, who understands it, probably has been there herself. But the reason why this is so also wonderful introducing you is that you've been a recipient of an award. So I'm sure you'd like to share that with us. Women of the West Award recipient. So I want to hear about that. And you've also got a founder of this Injured Worker Wellbeing Week, which is going to be May 31st through June. Is it June? June 4th. Yeah, June 4th, 2021. So welcome, Rosemary.
Thank you. I'm always amazed when people read that out, because it's like, I want to meet that person.
Yeah, I get to meet her. And that's you.
Okay, I'll meet her after you do. Because it's I guess it's just doing what needs to be done, and then having other people look at it and go, "Wow, that's great,"
Mhm.
or whatever it is that they say. They don't always say, "Wow, that's great," but it really is about just seeing the challenge, sitting with the challenge as long as needs be, and then working out how to overcome the challenge.
Yeah.
And sometimes there's no scaffolding to climb. There's nothing. You really do have to start from ground zero and wing it, wish it, pray it, believe in yourself, because there are times when you're doing something and you're starting something that even your pet cat won't believe in you, because it is so bizarre what you're attempting to do. And then before you know it, other people are just going, "Oh, that's actually working, and let's investigate it, or let's find out more about it," or whatever it is that pulls them in.
What would you say though? Whoops, there was a little feedback. What would you say though? You said nobody would believe you, and then what do you know? Somehow you get to. What was the experience of not? Let's start there. Like not feeling like you had a voice. What was that?
I became an injured worker in 1994, and I spent the first 3 years of that not knowing where I was, not knowing what was going on, not actually understanding the system, workers' comp system. I fell into prescription addiction, and this is really quite a challenging part. But I attempted suicide 3 times in that period. I have no memory, no working memory of the first 2 attempts. And what I call smoke memories of the 3rd attempt. Smoke memories where it seems very, very real for a few seconds and then it's gone again. So the only real knowledge I have of the 3 attempts is what other people have told me and what I have read in my own medical files. And it's terrifying to look at that and go how close I was to not being here, and how totally out of control I was, just living from one day to the next, one set of tablets or medication to the next, and very quickly developing an opioid addiction. It happens so easily, and it happens by stealth, and before you know it, you're not the person who you were. And coming out of that was no easy task. So you really have to dig deep to find the meaning that's left within your life to get there.
Yeah, what a beginning of a story around having lost your voice, actually almost having lost your life. You don't have a voice unless you have a life. But how to go underneath and find her once again. How did you do that?
It was actually quite by accident. As most things, most of the good things in my life have been by a serendipitous accident. A person who loves me, and I rarely talk about my family, so I never mention their names. And that's a personal agreement that we have. But he said to me one morning, after he had got me out of bed and cleaned me up and set me up for the day, I don't remember looking at him at all, but he said to me, and it was words that cut worse than any knife could ever cut. He said, "You've got 3 hours before your next hit." And I was like, didn't quite understand what that meant, but I knew that it was hard. He was working night shift at the time, so he went to bed, and I struggled for the rest of the day to, first of all, stand up, because standing up was quite difficult at that time. So once I actually stood up, got myself showered and dressed and everything, I gathered together all the medication that was in my house, including pethidine injections that were on the fridge door next to the eggs. Now, I'm sure my children, as they were growing up, thought it was quite normal for everybody to have pethidine injections. I actually, at that stage, I was pretty close to learning how to inject myself rather than call the locum to come and inject me. So I gathered it all together in several large ice cream containers. I gathered all the repeat prescriptions, and I drove myself down to see my doctor, and I walked in and I just put all the stuff on his desk, and he asked me what I wanted him to do with it, and I said I didn't care. I knew I couldn't have it. I couldn't risk it being in my house anymore. So we had a very long conversation, and he wouldn't let me leave. He was actually at the point of hospitalising me because he thought I was having a mental breakdown. But as I've said to him many times since, I was actually having a mental breakout. Clarity had sort of hit me right between the eyes. He wouldn't let me leave unless I took the repeat prescriptions back with me. So I agreed to that, and but I knew, I accepted the weakness in my character enough to know that if I kept them, I would use them, because the pain by then was really starting to get to me. So I did what I thought at the time a very smart thing. I just opened up a wood fireplace that I had in my house, and I just put the repeats in the fireplace and set fire to them. So I had no backup other than I knew I could go back to my doctor and get whatever I needed. He couldn't get me into a detox centre. So I quite literally went cold turkey. And I can tell you that there is no Hollywood movie, there's no horror movie, there's no anything that will cover the sheer grossness, terror, fear, anxiety, loneliness. What I put my family through for the next 4 to 6 weeks was a testimony to their love for me, because they got me through it. And you know what? Not one of them has ever said anything about that time. I think they knew that I wasn't going to survive unless I got off the medication, and unless they helped me through it, I was definitely never going to come back. So it's a hard story, and I try to keep it as brief as possible. But it's important that other people know that this is not something that you mess with. And I would never, ever recommend to anybody going cold turkey, because it really is hell on wheels.
Well, this is to hear you reveal all the levels of the physical torture that as well as the emotional pain, but the right message here around love that surrounded you. And there must have been something, we talk about find your voice. There must have been something that you were listening to inside. There must have been a voice speaking to you.
Yeah, I talked to him, even though I'd lost both my parents. My dad and I had a very strong connection. So I've always been. I'm not a religious person, but I am of faith. So my dad and I would read passages out of the family Bible. So really, when I needed something, one of my children would either read something that was marked in the family Bible for me, or I would just sit there and hold the Bible and I would talk to my dad. Because I was his youngest child. So, and I probably was the son he wished he had, but the daughter that he received. If that makes sense. So I would talk to him, and I would hear his wisdom, and I'd go, yep, okay, I can do this. I can get through the next 5 minutes. I can get through the next. Sometimes it was as brief as I can get through the next 10 seconds. Mm-hmm. I can do this. It's odd. I remember at the time thinking, knowing that I was going to need a marker of some kind that needed to be able to grow with me. So I planted a row of sunflower seeds, and it was, if they grow, and it was the wrong time of the year to be planting sunflower seeds. So it was kind of like, if you grow, you grow. If you don't, you don't. But this one particular sunflower just kept growing, and I marveled at it and its tenacity to grow in the middle of winter. Because winters down here, or where I was living at the time, really was quite cold. So sunflowers aren't known for growing in the cold. So whether I just put it in the right sheltered spot or what, I don't know. But I realised if it could make it, I could make it.
Oh, it's so symbolic. What a metaphor and
So
inspiration that you received from this one flower.
you're actually you in the audience, you are the first person I've ever told that to, because it's there are parts of my life that I keep to myself, because I guess I'm like everybody else. I don't want to appear to be overly vulnerable, because it's really doesn't serve anybody.
Rosemary, your vulnerability is your strength. That's what I'm getting today from you, is and the way that you're opening up and sharing and revealing a very personal struggle that I think can speak to so many people. Just you opening up and showing us where the struggle happened, but also that there was a voice inside. It happened to be your father's who spoke to you, but I think that all of us who have had a struggle with finding our voice, we need to go way deep down so that we listen.
Oh,
Right? There's
yeah.
some core, but we have to go through all the stuff, and you had to give up a lot of stuff in order to surrender. And so the whole idea of that sunflower getting roots in the ground to get nourished, it feels like you went inside and got nourished by your dad's voice.
Well, you look for that thing, that hook, that something that is very strong, that's going to, you can hold to, even in the darkest of nights. It's there, and you can put your faith in that, and you can go, yep, I can do this. I think the challenge really was that I couldn't tell anyone. I didn't have the understanding of really what was going on. So I could tell people that it hurt, and you understand pain, but I couldn't describe the horror, the fear, the vacuum of everything that was there. And sitting at the dinner table and looking at my children and knowing that I love them, but and that quite literally I'd walk through hell for them, but not be able to feel connected, as connected as I knew I was. So yeah, in some ways I probably did have a breakdown, but it really was a breakout. You have to look around and go, this setting does not suit me, does not fit me. It is not serving me. And if it's not serving me, then it is not serving my family. So you really, you do hit rock bottom, and it's not a nice place to be. It doesn't taste nice. It doesn't smell nice. It doesn't look nice. But you have to accept it as a place to start from. You grow from there. You don't go from there. You grow from there.
Oh, great.
And
trouble with this sound, so I'm going to unplug my microphone there. That's going to be much better. Wow. And so, well, you tapped into strength, and let's say you found your voice. And so now, I mean, so having found your voice, what have you been able to do that you couldn't do when you were stuck?
I had a chance meeting. I knew I was starting to get quite agoraphobic. I really, other than I couldn't go out the front yard. I could go out the backyard and feel almost safe, but I couldn't go out the front yard. And I didn't understand that at all, because I used to be on my children's school councils and go to their sports days and do all that mum stuff. So I knew I had to push myself to get back out into a community of some kind. So I joined a poetry book writing type group for Writers Week here in Australia, and I met a lady there who was also going through workers' compensation, and her story was not quite as bad as mine, but it was bad in other ways. So we decided that we would find out what this beast was that was challenging our lives. I've always been a book nerd. Just give me a library and I quite happily live there. Hence the image that's behind me. That's my stairway to heaven. So I quite literally just took on this challenge of trying to find out what workers' compensation is, how it fits into a person's life. Because it's one thing to say that you have a workplace injury, but it's a totally different thing to actually understand the concepts behind it. So I just started researching it, trying to understand it, started writing letters to the various people who I thought should be able to tell me what it is. And it's interesting, there is quite literally research after research after research of the system from the system's point of view. Nothing from the injured worker's point of view. So the very reason that the system is in place doesn't get a look in. So as I said, I started writing letters and I started pushing buttons and I started phoning people and I started sending faxes, because back then we had fax machines. Mm-hmm. And I got noticed, not because I was doing anything out of the ordinary, but I was consistent, because I really wanted to know what this thing is. Mind you, 27 odd years later, I'm still trying to work out what it is. But the system, I was living in Adelaide at the time, and the system actually invited me in to find out. The thinking, as I've been told, the thinking was, if we tell her, we'll shut her up, she'll go away. They didn't take into account the amount of Irish that's still in this body. Yes. Tenacity. Mm-hmm. And it's not just that, it was curiosity and a need to understand and a need to help others. Because by then I understood, if I'm going through this, then others are also going through this.
Yes.
So they invited me in, and the CEO at WorkCover in Adelaide at the time realised that I wasn't going to go away. So we had this deal. I would go in 1 week a month, and I would learn a different department of the system for that week. By the end of the month, I had to be able to explain it to him. That actually allayed a lot of fear for me, but it also helped me understand that the injured worker community needs an advocate and needs a voice. And it needs a voice of cooperation rather than angry, constantly just harping, saying, well, you've got to do better, you've got to do better. You actually have to come up with a way of doing better. So that requires a lot of time to research it, to test it, to put your hypotheses into some sort of a framework, and then jump off the cliff and try it. So it's like, okay, I believe this is what we're going to do. I believe this will work. And it's quite literally as simple as gathering a group of from the injured worker community together, giving them a framework to rebuild their own life in. Tell them that is their life. You know, nobody actually has the right to tell you how you will live or what you can do. You know, we in the free world actually have so many choices. We're not limited by anything. So when you start to see that light, that spark coming back into their eyes, and you know, yep, the direction I've gone in is the right direction, not just for me, but it's the right direction for countless others within the injured worker community. And it just kept growing. And then you realise, by then I was actually, I had quite a few friends, colleagues within the industry, and one of them said to me, "Well, you know, you've got something. You better actually frame it properly." I'd met through an international congress that was held in Adelaide. I'd met several international people. So I rang one of them. He's sadly since passed away. I rang one of them and I said to him, "This is what I'm thinking. This is the framework that I think I can put this in, but I can't find it anywhere. And I'm never going to do an East Berlin accent." And he just said to me, "Rosemary, if anybody's going to write it, it will be you. Just write it." That just write it took me 3 years.
Well, again, writing is a way. Writing is a way of finding your voice. So I think that writing is that 3 years, however long, it still came through, whatever words and the.
And then you do something strange. You realise that you've got black ink on white paper, and it looks pretty powerful, but it's just black ink on white paper. So you actually have to name it. Which is where the name Craig's Table comes in. As I rang a colleague in Melbourne who had just lost his son. And he knew exactly what I was doing. He's part of the industry, so he knew I was doing something. And I explained it to him over the phone, and I said to him, he said, "Well, what do you want me to do?" And I said, "I want to name it Craig's Table, because it's about inviting people in. It's about sitting them down, wrapping them in whatever cotton wool they need, whatever steel wool they need, whatever framework they need, and just being, we can get through this together." And you do that at a table. You're sitting somewhere. There's always a table, and then everything can be laid out there. I had met Craig just once, but he was that type of person who you fell in love with without realising that you'd lost your heart to him. He was the most vibrant, beautiful young man. When I met him, he walked into his parents' house and he wrapped himself around his mum in front of his total stranger, and told his mum how much he loved her. And it was just one of those things that when I went, yeah, now I know why everybody says Craig is a magic person. So when we lost him, I needed a way to honour him in a way that he would always be with us. So Craig's table came from him. He worked in hospitality as well, so that kind of made sense. Yep. Craig was always the one who just said, yep, put the kettle on, we'll have a cup of tea, all that kind of stuff. So his parents said yes, that I could name my program after their son. So that's why it has nothing to do with workers' compensation. It has everything to do with the young man that I fell in love with.
Right. And earlier you mentioned being at a family table with your own children. So I just think table has some significance for you and the whole idea of
It does.
gathering together.
Yeah, I mean, we are the same all over the world. You sit down with someone, they'll invite you for breakfast, or there's always a breaking of bread somewhere. And once that bread is broken together, you have a connection that you can actually work with. So I know when I was in California at the end of 2015, I spent many happy hours just sitting at people's table talking to them. I didn't do any sightseeing. Went all the way over there to the other side of the world and just talked to people.
So that's your you talked about taking a leap, and I had this vision of your voice having wings, and then you talk about flying over here and you're using your voice to speak with people.
It was the most amazing 10 days of just living a dream and waking up every morning, pinching myself, going, oh my God, I am in California. And my host flew me over the California mountains, flew me to Catalina Island. It was just stuff that quite literally I never put into any kind of wishful thinking or bucket list. It just happened.
Well, this is a wonderful story, inspiring story. You said that there's going to be a Injured Workers Wellness Week. Can you talk
Wellbeing
about that? And is there any kind of promotional website or something you want to give in case somebody's listening and wants to join up?
Okay, Injured Worker Wellbeing Week is because quite literally there is still very little information about, or for the injured worker community, about where they can go for help, what questions they can ask, what is the difference between somebody telling them that your Uncle Bob had that same injury and he got millions of dollars in compensation, to what is the reality of really what really is going to happen. So a group of us sat down and we'd been talking about trying to put something together before COVID hit, and we never actually found the space or the time to pull it all together. We all knew that something had to be, there should be something, but we didn't quite work out what it was. So I am a scribbler. I'm the person who turns their bedroom mirror into a whiteboard because I wake up in the middle of the night and have to write something down. So rather than just having a little notepad alongside my bed, no, I've got whiteboard markers because my bedroom mirror is the whiteboard, at least in the bedroom. And I woke up this particular night, and I just spent the next 3 or 4 hours just writing everything. It was kind of like this massive brain dump just arrived. And by the time I went to bed again, and it was close to 7 o'clock in the morning, because I kind of realised I needed to get some sleep. I had written the framework for Injured Worker Wellbeing Week. Most people don't know that the 1st of June is actually International Day of the Injured Worker, which is why it spans the end of May through to the 4th of June. So it really is about celebrating the amazing talent and the amazing achievements that so many of our community have done. I mean, there are Paralympians all over the world who started out just being an employment injured person, and then have gone on to represent their countries and got various colour medals around their neck. But they would never have been there had they not been employment injured. And I find that totally amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's about celebrating them, but it's also about giving people the information that they need to have. For instance, we have a chemist who's going to explain how to take medication, what questions they should be asking their chemist, what it is that if you are taking a contraceptive pill, if you're taking one of the pain medications, that may wipe out the contraceptive pill. There's just things that people need to know but don't think to ask, or don't think that they have the right to ask. So it's just a gathering really of ideas, and it will be online, and it will be on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, and it'll be launched on Craig's Table's website. But the bigger idea, and as one person said, he knows that I plant an acorn, and then I'm picking acorns off the oak tree a week later, because I must admit I really don't have much patience for waiting. But the bigger idea is that next year we will hold what we're calling the Injured Worker Summit. And that is because the injured worker community, and doesn't matter which country you are in, the injured worker community is the largest unrecognised community that nation has. We have anywhere between 1 and 3 million injured workers in Australia. It's a number that we really have no record of. They don't have a voice. Nobody wants to know the social challenges or the life challenges that they go through. So it's time to have that conversation, and the only way to have it is to set that train in motion and go for it. So I've already started to have the meetings with various people here to actually get that happening next year. And if I'm not even sure yet that I can pull it off, but if I can pull it off, it will be the first time anywhere in the world that it will be a national conversation based on really what is the best way forward, not just for the injured worker community, but for the employers. and for the system itself. Without politics, without egos, without any of the stuff that goes into that kind of thing, it would just simply be, we can do better, we must do better. And there are highly talented, highly skilled people not at work today simply because they have an employment injury and nobody wants them. There was a thing on the radio news this morning talking about skill shortages, and yet I have access to as many skilled workers as you want in whatever profession you want, and they are quite literally left to the side because nobody thinks that these people can do anything. I'm what is known as an incomplete paraplegic. And yet, I'm not brain dead. I can still do a lot of things. My left hand doesn't work as well as it used to be pre-injury. I admit I've never picked up one of my grandchildren when they were born because quite literally I'm unlikely to drop them. But that does not mean that I can't love them, care for them, have somebody pass them to me. I can hold them, I just can't pick them up. So when you're talking about skill shortages, it's about learning the workaround, not saying, well, you can't do it that way, so you're not good. If a teacher is in a wheelchair, and I know this because one of my science teachers when I was at school, he was in a wheelchair. So if you're in a wheelchair, it doesn't mean to say that you can't teach. If anything, you actually teach better because you're sitting at the same level as your students are. So you're always eye to eye with them. If you are a master plumber, you can still train others to become a plumber. We need to rethink the way we do things. And we need to stop wasting the talent that's there.
Well, in order to rethink, it feels like it needed some attention to the problem, the situation, and that's what you've done in a major sort of way. I'm so excited that by this, the international, the injured worker day, my goodness, that you're going to bring more awareness, you're bringing more awareness to it. And this podcast is about finding your voice, changing your life. But what I just realized in listening to you, that by finding your voice, not only have you changed your life, but you're changing the lives of others. And that's the power. It's a ripple effect of what one voice can do for the world. So how do would they go to craigstable.com to find you, find more?
It's craigstable.net.au.
Okay, let's say that one more time because it's different in our country.
I have we have a lot of followers from America. It's craigstable.net.au, or they can look at me up on LinkedIn. And Craig's Table will soon have its own site on LinkedIn. It's the amazing thing is you and I met 10 days ago, something like that.
Yeah, it's
something like that.
It's really meant to be.
So it's easy enough to find me. If they find me, then they find Craig's Table.
Great. All right. Well, anything that you'd like to say to any other words? It feels like you've really opened up a whole world that's been unattended to, and now you're bringing light to it.
I quite believe that, and as I said to you before we started recording, I really am an introvert. I much prefer to be stuck inside a book somewhere. but it's about knowing that there is something that needs to be said. And quite literally, if the only person that you are saying it to is yourself, then you're not getting your message out. I started writing a weekly blog on LinkedIn, a weekly post on LinkedIn, because I got to the point where I had to scream at something, and I had to take the words out of my head and put them somewhere. So it's about just starting and committing to that start. Even, you know, I write Monday Muses, and there are times when I think I'm not going to find anything to write, but I write it anyway. And I've never, quite literally, I have never missed posting in, I think I'm up to about 360 Mondays now, something like that. So it's about starting and find a group. I mean, I actually started learning to do public speaking by just joining a community college that taught public speaking. But join a group, join you know, your mother's club, father's club, you know, whatever it is, just to start to hear what other people have got to say, and realize that the only reason you're there is because you've also got something to say. And you don't have to agree with everybody. And sometimes the most amazing changes and outcomes come because somebody in a group said, that's not what I think. This is what I think. Or if I was doing that, this is how I would do it. You really don't need a big voice to change anything. You have to believe in yourself. One of my friends who I've met through this journey of mine said that she was forever running out of courage. So I made her a courage meter. And every time that she felt that she was running out of courage, all she had to do was pop in a 20-cent coin into the courage meter, and that courage meter would give her more courage to get through the day. Yeah. That courage meter paid for her to go to Paris, because she upped the ante by putting $5 notes in there instead of 20-cent pieces. But she set the goal, and she realized the only way she was going to make it was to keep feeding her courage. So she fed it, you know, $5, and then she went to Paris. And one of the most amazing phone calls that I ever got in my entire life was when she rang me from the top of the Eiffel Tower and explained to me what she was looking at. That's when she told me that it was the courage meter that actually got her to Paris. I just thought that she'd save really hard to get there. But so it's about, you know, really is about just finding that step and taking it, and getting up the next morning and taking the next step.
Well, you're a model of that, and thank you for sharing not only the difficult part of the journey, but also what's come out of you finding strength and being willing to stand, do the research, take a stand for a community that not only you've belonged to, but one that you want to bring much more attention to. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm sorry my hair is wet. We're actually having